we can get it in under the wire, and I hope you can get home on time. I really appreciate your coming so far.
Yeah.
And I'm anxious to talk about that thing with the Lakota. That's really interesting, and your life is interesting, so I'm really looking forward to this. Welcome to Manhattan Network.
Thank you.
And bear with me because I'm going to be learning from you. And in the audience, we'd like to welcome you. Welcome very, very much to Conversations. It's a pleasure to welcome to the program today Dave Lubrosky. Is that how I said? Lubrosky.
Exactly.
And he's associated with an entity, an organization called it's called IDEM or IDEM. He's going to explain to us what that is. And he's here now just before he departs for a venture. Volunteer to help build the, if I understand it, you'll set me straight on it, a home for the teacher that is at the Lakota Indian reservation in South Dakota. And he's about to partake of that as part of his activity. But he's had an interesting life. And Dave, welcome very, very much to Conversation.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, young man, I wonder if maybe you could explain for me a little bit where you, if you could, you know, we start the program, if you could explain a little where you were born and raised. And I see you were in Seattle in '99. There's some events in your youth, in your life that you've been involved in. Could you start, where were you born and raised? And then there's a way of wading into a conversation about yourself and your ideas about the human condition, how it might be improved.
Right. Well, I spent the earlier part of my childhood in Massachusetts.
Okay.
And moved to Pennsylvania when I was 12.
Which part of Massachusetts?
Amherst.
Amherst, yeah, that's where both my kids, my children were at Amherst. You at Mass and at Amherst, yeah. That's a very interesting part of the world.
Yeah.
Oh, You were born there, and your parents were there. I take it that's where you were there in your youth.
Yeah, I wasn't. I spent childhood in Amherst. I was born overseas. But grew up in Amherst and then later in southeastern Pennsylvania.
Born overseas. I don't mean to pry.
No, in Germany, southern Germany.
Yeah, in Germany. Was your dad a businessman or in the military or something?
No, he was an English teacher over there.
I see. Teaching English in Germany. So you were actually born in Germany.
Yep.
So do you have German citizenship?
No.
As well? No, you never did. You had American citizenship. That's interesting. If somebody is that your parents were American.
My father's American. My mom's from France.
From France. You got an international background here and everything.
I certainly
But it's
do,
interesting
yeah.
if you're born, your father's. That's interesting. If your father was an American, your mother was French, you were born in Germany. So when the birth certificate is a German birth certificate, how does the citizenship work out in something like that? I'd be just curious. We've just had this immigration bill beat down here in the United States and so on. But that's an interesting thing. You had U.S. citizen right from the get-go because of your dad, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And is that a thing you can choose, right?
I guess you can choose if you want, but well, you can choose between French and German.
Yeah.
I mean French and American. But being born over in Germany, that's not enough to.
Now, if somebody comes here, there are people come up from Mexico and whatnot, from South America or Latin or Central America, and they're born here.
Yep.
Then they got the rights of a citizen, yeah?
Yeah.
It's an interesting
But,
issue, isn't it?
well, the population density in this country just isn't as high as it is over there.
Yeah, right.
I think
But
that's
that's an issue that's an interesting one, isn't it? About how citizenship's been going to be determined and so forth.
Certainly, yeah. There's
See, we haven't gotten you out of diapers, and we've really got an interesting interview already.
Exactly, yeah. It starts right at the beginning, yeah. Yeah, there was, back in the 70s, there was a man he'd fought for the Americans during World War II and got interested in the citizenship thing. And he tried to issue a document for himself as a world citizen.
Gary Davis.
Exactly.
Gary Davis is a dear friend of mine, and he issues the international passport.
Exactly.
Yeah, he's a great guy. We've done 3 or 4 or 5 programs over the years with Gary. He's a great guy. Just got a note from him about yesterday. So yes, go ahead. Yeah, he puts out the world passport. Did you ever get one of those?
No, I never did.
You did. You could. You know, you could register.
I didn't know you still could.
Yeah, you can. It's still being done. He just had Joe Lee. Is there somebody famous in show business, Joe Lee or somebody? And she's been speaking up for, and he had made a note. A friend of mine passed it on to me because she's a celebrity, I guess, and she had gotten a world's passport. She had gotten a world passport. They're still issuing the World Service Foundation. Gary, yeah. You see, we didn't even get you out of the crib, and we're already talking about interesting matters of that. But I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
No. Well, he ended up, in his struggle to not have any citizenship whatsoever, he ended up camping out on a bridge between France and Germany, and because neither country would let him in, so he ended up camping out on this bridge, and people would bring him food and got into all the papers and
he
so
was
on
a
and so
cause
forth.
célèbre, it was, yeah.
Yeah.
And it still is. And the idea of he's saying nationalism is something that we got to get over, and we ought to be citizens of the world. And there's a certain truth to that, because the nations, the various nations, it's sort of in a sense an extension of the class thing in a way, because some of the nations are very wealthy, and some of them aren't. So that's a way of keeping a division between people, you know, at a class level or something.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, you got to be aware of, you know, modern conditions and what would happen if thousands and thousands of people moved to one place all in, you know, a matter of weeks or something, you know.
Yeah.
But there's certainly that aspect of control and protection of economically well-to-do areas, such as the European Union or the United States, which is definitely questionable.
Yeah, it's like this immigration thing that people were saying it's going to create the United States like a gated community. We have gated communities of people where they live very well inside, and then these walls go up, and you go in lots of parts of the world, they got communities to guard the home against, you know, a more difficult situation, that kind of thing. Or gated, like the United States is like a gated community in terms of people that are less well off and that sort of thing. Big issue that, so many of these issues interrelate in terms of, we haven't even got you out of you were at Amherst or something, and then you went down to Pennsylvania with the family, I presume, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, what, a rural part of Pennsylvania?
Yeah, fairly rural.
Out west of Penn?
No, southeast, about 45 minutes out of Philadelphia.
Okay, not Bucks County.
Right near Bucks,
Okay,
Chester
nice
County.
country, yeah?
Yeah, real nice country. You got to like it.
And were you in a rural setting or a town or a city or?
We lived in one of those housing developments where it's not really rural because there's all these houses around, but there's, it's not a village as such. So.
And what was your family? He was he was teaching English in Germany.
Yeah, then he became a German teacher in the States.
In German, a teacher in the States. So he was sort of intellectually curious and encouraging of thinking and that kind of stuff, and interesting conversations around the dinner table within the family setting and that
every
kind of
now and then, yeah.
Every now and then. And was he political, or was your family political? Because you seem to have some political.
Definitely not radical anyway.
Not radical, huh?
Not particularly political, no.
And when you were very young, high school age and that sort of thing, were you into sports? Were you athletic? Were you into? Did you have to? I see when you were in the Alps, you were tending cows one summer, which is not a bad idea, it seems to me.
No. Well, what happened was.
From your resume, I mean, yeah.
I somehow gotten an interest in nature as a child.
Okay.
And kind of became interested in environmental issues.
Okay. On your own, more or less. Huh?
Well, somebody, I guess, somebody'd given me a subscription to some nature magazine. And that kind of influenced me.
Yeah.
But that kind of grew into a general concern for the environment and kind of jumped on the protect the environment bandwagon. And that kind of grew into an interest in organic foods. My mom used to buy some organic food sometime, and well, mostly actually. And then through getting an interest in that, I got into animal rights a bit.
Good.
I got interested in that through the organic food issue.
Right. That they relate, don't they? Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at how the animals are raised,
it is an absolute utter disgrace. And I think it's going to become a huge issue. Yeah.
It is a huge issue.
It's a huge issue, but it's going to become even more so in the general society.
I hope so. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with you on that 100%. Yeah.
And from there, somehow made the jump, or went on to become a little bit more interested in social issues from there.
Did you raise animals? Was it a farm? No, it wasn't. It was
I worked on.
Not really. Yeah.
I helped out on a farm one summer or two, but I
and
never.
You did tend cows in the Alps in the one
Yeah.
summer.
Well, after I graduated high school, then I worked with animals a little bit on one or two farms. But at that point, it was more of a consumer's opinion thing. And yeah, so I got more into the social side of things, and got interested in unfair trials that landed people in death row, such as Mumia Abu Jamal and stuff like that. And just started picking up on other, what do you call them, injustices in general.
That's a
throughout
huge
the
canvas,
world.
My brother. There's a lot of injustice in the world, don't you
absolutely.
think? Yeah, right.
And yeah, I guess through high school, starting to look for what sort of what's gone wrong. Where do you want to? What are you interested in changing? I mean, what am I interested in changing? Then I never lost interest in the whole environmental issue as it relates to farms and organics.
Yeah.
But
environment.
Yeah, I never lost interest in that, but without really getting too involved in it, I placed a greater and greater importance on the social issues.
Right, and even not into political.
Well, yeah,
because they interrelate, don't they? They do. They inform each other, as they say. Yeah, yeah. I think you're right on that. You didn't go university.
No.
It was a matter of choice. Did you do a lot of reading?
Yeah, I read.
Yeah.
I read a bit.
Sort of taught yourself?
Yeah. I never really delved too deeply into books. I mostly form my opinions from
life's experience?
Yeah, more.
Like as you walk through the world, you can see and take things in without
you read the
reading
papers.
Was there anyone who influenced you philosophically? Rachel Carson? Or,
yes, definitely.
Or
Rachel Carson was a big influence on me.
She was an influence on a lot of people, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Silent Spring. Yeah.
That was in the beginning. I read a couple books in that direction about synthetic chemicals and how they act as hormones. They're your body thinks they're hormones, and they can influence your what's it called? Your glandular system.
Yeah, sure. Your whole system.
Your whole the age at which children reach puberty is getting younger and younger, and that
is
has
that
to
a fact?
do with
I didn't realize that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Sexual potency issues and stuff like that all have to do with these hormone mimics, they call them.
Yeah. Did you ever hear of a guy named Barry Commoner by any chance? But you were reading, and your reading was that, and then you did move over more into the social thing and that, and then you moved around quite a bit. Hitchhiked quite a little bit around and about and so forth?
Yeah. Well, I didn't...
learning all the time.
You could say that.
Yeah, right.
I didn't want to... I just go off to college and study something that would get me a job.
Yeah, that's what it's mostly about, I think, don't you?
Oftentimes,
a lot of it
I mean,
is,
after...
unfortunately, yeah.
Oftentimes it is. I think there's lots of people who do really study to learn, but I took a more revolutionary stance and didn't choose to go to college. Decided to try to learn from life, at least for a couple of years.
All right, that might be good. I've had a number of people who say they thought the going to school got in the way of their education. Because if you travel around, you can pick up a lot just talking and looking and being thinking and communicating, conversing with people and all that sort of thing without necessarily getting a degree. A lot of that effort, I used to teach university, you know, and a lot of that has to do, unfortunately, with people. They're doing that either to meet certain people, like you go to Harvard, you meet big shots. And so you're going to get connections and social connections down on Wall Street, so you can get, and it's also to get a chance to have something you can do so that you can earn money to have something to eat. It's about getting materialistic values about how you can be able to live a better life. That's what motivates people, rather than, as you say, just the love of learning or a connection to something real, a praxis, right? If you understand what I'm saying.
I do, yeah.
Yeah, I can understand that.
I think that as long as someone has an interest in what they're doing, then it's right.
Yeah. Or if I agree
yeah,
with
if there's something that something besides the money they want.
A lot of these socializing things that happen, school is a socializing thing and that kind of thing. A lot of those things are socializing people to fit into a society. And I don't know if you ever read any of David Thoreau, or if you read any, or Eric Fromm. Did you ever hear of a fellow?
No, I'm not such an Eric Fromm fan.
You're not an Eric Fromm fan? You're not? Why? I'm curious.
I find him a bit sentimental.
Sentimental?
Well, not that, but I'm quite, I'm not, like I say, I haven't read all his works or anything
No,
like
well,
that.
he wrote a lot. You could spend your whole life reading the works of one author sometimes, yeah.
Thoreau definitely, Thoreau was an influence.
Could I share a little experience with you when I was about your age?
Absolutely.
What are you, 26, 27?
26, yeah.
Yeah, no, I was a little younger than that. I went to, I had Thoreau, I took Thoreau, Walden, and I went to Alaska for a whole summer. I lived out in the wilderness in Alaska, and I had Thoreau. And I had a little thing, I was living off the land and catching fish, and there were blueberries. You ever been to Alaska? They've got cabbages that are this big because they got the sunlight all the time, the Matanuska Valley and everything. Really interesting place. And they have bears and everything, and it was the wilderness, right? And I went up, and I was a kid from the city, and I didn't know anything about it. I just wanted to understand Thoreau. And I got a whole summer I was out there just living off the land and whatnot. And I went and I got up to Mount McKinley Park, and it was really dumb. I mean, did you ever think I was really dumb when I was young? I mean, well, anyway, never mind that. But I went into the wilderness. I mean, I was just going into the wilderness with just a sleeping bag. And I went up Mount McKinley, and I got above where there were any trees or anything. It was 5, 6 days walking back into the wilderness and seeing the animals and singing Val-de-Ree and all that kind of stuff.
Were you by yourself?
Yes, and that's stupid because
no,
nobody knew I was there, and there was nothing but there. And I got above where there were any trees, and it had been wonderful weather. You know, the weather was nice. You get sunlight all the time. And this is great and everything. And then all of a sudden the weather changed, my brother. The weather changed, and this terrible storm came out of the northeast, and it was a mixture of rain, sleet, hail, and it's just the worst possible thing. And I was a good 40, 50 miles away from anything, right, up this mountain. And I stood there on the top of the mountain, and I screamed to the environment. I screamed, what am I doing here? And if I had to walk down, and that's a long way back because there's nothing you could do but walk. Yeah. You know what I mean? And if I had slipped on a rock, which is very easy because you're walking on rocks, following the stream down the damn mountain and it was just way, way far. You know what I mean? Really far. If I had slipped, I would be dead because there was no geopositioning. I had told nobody I was there or anything. I was just, you know what I mean? And so I just shared that with you because I was Mr. Thoreau. I'm afraid I threw the book away after I did that, but I shouldn't have. It was my fault for being not prepared and so forth. But I'm not so sure I'm not sure what I learned from that, except I knew I wanted to get back to cities, which is maybe not a good, I'm sharing this, and maybe I shouldn't be even sharing this as a personal thing, but it had an effect upon me. I was glad to get back to the city, or back to civilization. Have you taken ventures like Outward Bound or adventure things, or go out into nature and test yourself and all that kind of stuff?
I bet. I've done, I did a 2-week canoeing trip in Canada.
Okay.
And
white water or no?
No.
No, okay. No. Just gentle lake or something.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and been, done a bit of backpacking.
Uh-huh.
But, yeah, I never went the whole summer like that, but I've spent a bit of time just, like a couple days at a time.
Well, that was the summer of '58. That was the year that Alaska became a state that I did that thing. That was my summer in Alaska. Anyway, and what about you have a lot of friends? You have a wide circle of friends. The people your age, you're 26 or so. Is there do you find a number of comrades that are sort of in the same kind of way you are in terms of your consciousness, your thought about the human condition and so forth? Maybe some things are very clear, some things aren't, what the situation is. Optimistic, pessimistic, thinking there's things that can be done, thinking it's hard to find ways of trying to affect the whole system which might be in trouble, those kind of things.
Well, to sort of continue, I guess,
yeah.
After high school, I hitchhiked across the country and, met a lot of people that way.
Isn't that fun?
But absolutely.
Is it still fun? It was when I did a lot of hitchhiking.
Yeah.
5, 6, 7 times across the country and everything, and you meet all kinds of interesting people.
all kinds of people.
Yeah.
Even today, I mean, and what happens a lot is everybody who picks you up says, oh, you really got to watch out. There's all sorts of dangerous people out there, and the next you say, all right. The next person picks you up and says, you really got to watch out.
You learn something from that, right?
Oh yeah.
What do you think? There's a little paranoia going on in the society.
Yeah, and there's maybe like a couple less, bad guys out there than you think.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's, behind most people, there's a real interesting person to meet there.
I think everybody's interesting, you know.
Yeah.
And basically, if you meet everybody individually almost, most everybody seems to be really a good sort to me. You think most people are? Will Rogers, you're young to remember Will. He used to say, I never met a man I didn't like.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
That, yeah.
Have you met any people you didn't like? Or do you like, oh, you have? Okay. I'm just kind of playing with you now in a way. But do you have a sense that most people are really at core pretty good and so forth, and maybe the social conditions or what are the problem, or the political or the class warfare kind of things that would cause the trouble, societal organizational assumptions cause the trouble? I
think that's a lot of it. That's a big part of it. But yeah, I met lots of people who also kind of said, oh yeah, like I used to be interested in this or that kind of activism, or go to protests, or used to be into this or that, but sort of given up on it. And then you also meet people who, really believe in something and stay with it, and that's something special.
Yeah. You hitchhiked to Santa Fe one time of a summer, and then I think it was connected in a certain kind of time scale, because you were at the famous Seattle 99 demonstrations against the WTO, apparently. So you picked up some political orientation and so forth.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well,
okay. Maybe we could talk about that. Was a monumental event in the minds of lots of people.
Yeah, I think it really was a monumental event. Yeah, sooner or later you pick up on the fact that the people with the money are really, how do you say, influencing the course of world events.
Yeah,
as far as just,
yes.
Just economically, as far as what kind of regulations governments are allowed to make. The World Trade Organization was making laws like prohibiting states from making laws to prohibit, I'm making a long sentence here. Massachusetts made a law that prohibited importing clothing made by children, if I'm correct.
Okay, I'm not familiar, but go ahead,
There was some law that Massachusetts passed that was of a humanitarian nature, and that law wasn't allowed to pass because it would prohibit trade.
I see.
That kind of thing was going on.
Yeah, that they will do.
It was very clear that that wasn't right, and the WTO was who was standing for that kind of injustice. And
did you have a position on NAFTA when that was announced and that kind of thing and everything? Or are you familiar or that? Yeah.
That happened a couple years before I was really paying attention to all that.
But you were that event. Did you get in the wafting in any of the tear gas or anything in Seattle or not?
Yeah.
Or, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You did.
Yeah. What really impressed me about Seattle was that the people who were there were the protesters.
Yeah.
Were really nonviolent.
Yeah.
I mean, the police would spray tear gas, or they'd charge the crowd with horses and stuff like that, and people were really focused on the element of nonviolence. The media, of course, came afterwards, and well, they were there the whole time, but they really focused on, there was a small group of anarchists who came up and started smashing windows, and they were quick to put that on the national news.
Yeah.
But Seattle as a whole was really very strongly nonviolent.
It was nonviolent, and it was very effective, and they
Also,
stopped the whole business as usual nature of what they were trying to have go on there, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it inspired a lot of people. Yeah, you're nonviolent in your politics and so forth, and
yeah,
you are. Okay, Gandhian? No.
I certainly have a great admiration for what Gandhi accomplished.
Martin King?
Yeah, definitely.
More than Malcolm X?
Or
you had that tension. Malcolm X was perceived by the established society as being more what they call militant.
That is, well...
Or Stokely Carmichael?
He was, definitely in his earlier years he was.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, but when I was younger, I identified more with people like Martin Luther King and Gandhi than with Malcolm X. And whereas now I'm more interested in Malcolm X.
Now you're getting a little bit more radical in your older age. Is that it? Maybe that kind of thing. Maybe because the conditions are getting a little bit more drawn out now. I mean, more strung out in a lot of ways. Although it's always been like that. I wonder, you could share with us IDEM, or the organization. You're part of an organization. I guess it's Swiss-based, or maybe you could share a little of that.
Well, IDEM is based on empowering youth, or giving youth opportunity to take initiative and to be part of, I would say, socially oriented projects. It doesn't have to be social, it can be ecological, but it's about connecting youth with initiatives like, well, for example, last summer in Brazil, I did a work camp at a place called Aramitan, which is a center for at-risk youth. They take in youth from the streets.
And, in a particular city, or where?
Sao Paulo.
In Sao Paulo, yeah. Big town, big city, yeah.
And they had people from all over the world, young people, coming there to help. We were putting in windows and laying concrete and doing normal construction work, but at the same time we were part of this project to help street kids.
Right, boy, really needed,
and
terrible it can be,
yeah. Well, the conditions on the streets.
Yeah.
But that experience of hands-on work in that kind of a setting, I think was a life-changing experience for some people.
When I was about your age, they had President Kennedy, and they had a thing called the Peace Corps, and they had a thing called the Alliance for Progress down in Latin America and everything. Is it along the lines of what that was about, as you understand what was going on in the 1960s, trying to give an opportunity for people to do some good with people all over the world and build good feeling between people? Is the IDEM an institution that's in that vein of thinking, or what? It's Swiss-based or something, or when did
they have an office in Switzerland. That's the most developed branch. They have groups in Brazil, in Sweden. There's also a group in New Zealand, but they're different than the Peace Corps in that it's more based around work camps, which are volunteer opportunities. Will last about 3 weeks, and really
hands-on.
Yeah, very much hands-on.
Right.
The Peace Corps is it's in a similar vein.
Yeah.
But it's the Peace Corps. You go out by yourself for a whole year.
Yeah, and it's also tied in a certain sense quasi or not to the government.
Yeah.
IDEM is a public, private sector thing.
Yeah, it's a nonprofit.
Did it get? It has a Latin base or something. It means
identity.
It means identity.
It's the root of the word identity.
It is IDEM. E-D-E-M. Is that it?
IDEM.
IDE. And who got it started? When did that get started? And is that in the project you have now going out to the Lakota is involved with that? Yes. In a sense, okay. Share a little of that. But who got it started? When did it get started? And is it growing? And
yeah, it's a young organization.
Okay.
It started a couple of years ago.
Only. Okay.
Yeah, it's very young. A couple people had the same idea, which is really there are in third world countries and all over, there are these initiatives that do work with street kids, kindergartens, schools, ecological centers, places that really have a vision to, create a seed of community.
Okay, yeah.
And you have also all over the world young people who want to do something, but
Absolutely.
They don't know how to get connected. They
Right.
don't know how to, who to call, where to go. But they know that there's something they want to do, or that
and they might
do.
There's some on one side, or maybe some are a little bit more favored, want to help.
Exactly.
That kind of thing, and they're looking for avenues where that can happen, where it's not all politics for a system that you may be having some questions about its basic premises, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
There aren't opportunities for that kind of consciousness to find a way of going. We have a thing, Habitat for Humanity. Mr. Carter started. He was the president along that line. They're doing that, but well, that's very interesting. Was there a personality who got the IDEM started and so forth? And do they have a central office somewhere or somebody associated with? You're also involved with the Rudolf Steiner and anthroposophy. That's another very interesting. You've really gotten yourself into some very interesting things in your life's venture. Yeah. But IDEM, if you could, a little bit more. Who started it? Is only a couple years going? Is it growing? And there's offices in the United States now, or share a little bit of, if you could, the structural nature of the organization.
Well, the folks who started it were mainly from Europe, so that's the first place it got started. And they organized a conference, International Youth Conference, last summer. Took place in August. In Sao Paulo in Brazil.
In Sao Paulo, okay.
And before and after the conference there were these work camps where groups of 25 to 30 youth would volunteer for 3 weeks.
People coming from around other parts of the world?
Yeah. New Zealand, the States, Germany, England, South America.
Do the people just come voluntarily on their own?
Yeah.
Is there any payment at all, or airplanes and that kind of stuff? And that gets to be a little difficult to move around the world. It's very expensive to move at a drop of a hat.
Yeah.
Are they able to give some support in terms of transportation and that kind of stuff?
Nobody should stay away because of financial reasons.
Okay.
But
that's a reality for a lot of people.
Absolutely. That was one of the things that was being looked at is if a conference like that were to happen again, that there'd be a fund set up so that more people from Africa, for example, could come.
Absolutely.
There's also the problem.
It's hard to move if you only got about $3 in the kit. You can't go very far.
Exactly.
And that's, right.
But you
and
also
there should be a foundation set up for improving for that kind of thing by people who have. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yeah, it seems to me, yeah.
Yeah, very much so. That's something that is very connected to this IDEM project.
And that's the root is identity.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very important word in terms of human consciousness. People have a sense of identity and association that gives them a sense of purpose, and so it's a very important human characteristic and need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that people are looking for these days.
Absolutely, particularly the youth, perhaps, is youth-oriented,
absolutely.
Right? Yeah, that's for teenagers on up to 30 or something like that? Or
well,
35?
We don't really put an age limit on it, but as far as, but teenage to whoever feels himself to be part of that youth.
And was there a person associated with the starting of that? Like you associate Mr. Carter with Habitat for Humanity. And does it have any connection to a governmental level of anything? It's all in the private sector?
It's all in the private sector.
Civil society thing.
Definitely. It's very much a part of civil society. That whole concept of civil society as a separate part of society.
Yeah, it's a growing important thing. I think it's going to become ever more so.
As an independent part of society.
As what?
As an independent part of society.
Right.
These NGOs connecting and influencing what's happening in the world.
Right.
Like what's happening at the World Social Forum these days.
It's just happening in Atlanta now.
Exactly.
As we talk.
Yes,
They're meeting for the first time in the United States, yeah.
Yeah, someone from IDEM is at the World Social Forum.
Yeah. Oh, they are? Okay.
Yes.
And how many of the, do you become a member or something? Or is it a loose confederation, or is it just word of mouth that people get together who are in this? Would you count yourself one of the IDEM community? Is that, or?
Yeah, I'm definitely becoming one.
You are,
It's a network of youth.
Right.
It's a youth network who are part of projects or know of projects around the world, but it's very much it's a lot of organizational work. Setting up projects, getting people to come. How it works is, once a group of people is formed who's interested in
a project,
right, then you get together and if everything goes right, you work together on how the fundraising is set up. You get together the construction materials.
Really? That's a big challenge, yeah, okay.
You pay for everything associated with your project, and then you go and you do it.
Well, that's calling upon an awful lot of capability on the part of young people, isn't it? Very often, I mean.
Well, there's guidance. I mean, you don't do it alone. You have professionals.
They used to have a thing called does it come up in your reading? You're talking around campfires or whatever. The idea of what they call community development, and you involve the people in a project or something. Like, if I may venture into my life again, when I was about your age or younger or something like that, I was doing research for a dissertation, right? And we lived in Bolivia, among the Aymara Indian peoples there. Did research on the early prehistory and so forth. But they had a thing there called community development. It was a national thing. And they had people, some of those Peace Corps people were there then. And they would get a community, they would get together, and then they would say, okay, we need a school. And this is among the Aymara, who had been very badly treated by Europeans after Pizarro. And as you're aware, the colonial. Anyway, and so they would say, okay, we need a school. And then they'd all get together, and then you can make adobes. You can just make adobes out of what's there. But then they got to a point where, because they were very poor, they were very poor people and everything. And but you could make it. Then you get to the point where you had to have, and then they would select people who would sort of, in a sense, represent them. They were trying to build a national system of communication from the people, among the people, campesino. And then they would get to the point where they had to have what they call calamina. It's like tin roof. They'd have to have the tin roof. That was beyond their capability to do it. But they would say, we got the school built, we got the walls built up, and we need and then there would be a thing go up, and then the calamina would come. Do you understand? But there was a linking to resources that were beyond the ability of the people to realize. Is there some of that involved in what you do? It's a concept called community development.
It's similar. Not that the people in a particular place don't have the knowledge to do it. It's more about they don't have the money to do it.
The resources, yeah.
But it's definitely about bringing people together. It's obvious that young people in third world countries don't have the money to fly places.
They don't have money to
go to conferences and all that stuff. Like people in the industrial countries of the north do all the time.
Exactly.
And part of the idea of
But they can do quite a bit among themselves by getting together and doing something, and they're involved in it. Like they could make the adobes to make the walls.
They
you know what I'm saying? But they couldn't manage the Calamina, the tin roof.
Well, I don't know.
I don't know. It's just, maybe that's stretching for an analogy, but the idea is the whole community is involved, you know, in the process, rather than it all being down from the patron. Everybody just saying, do what I tell you and you'll do it. That's the way much of the world has been organized, authoritarian, right? Politically and otherwise.
Yeah.
But to involve the people, and that can be dangerous because you get people aroused in times of thinking that they have some rights and so forth, which have usually been dictated by the people that are in power.
Well, it's
Maybe
not so
I'm
political. It's
too far, yeah.
What this is about is more bridging economic boundaries and
Right.
cultural boundaries. When you not to say we're not saying that people in other places aren't capable of building houses.
Yeah.
But it's much more through the conditions that they're in, they're either not empowered.
Right.
They just don't have the money, and like I was saying, it's obviously not possible for kids in poor countries to, you know, fly to other places and
Right.
and you know, wealthier younger people do.
Yeah.
But through having projects in other places, in third world countries, in Brazil, on Pine Ridge Indian Reservation.
That's where you're headed.
And
yeah, in a week or two.
exactly.
Yeah. We want to talk about that, obviously, but go on, yeah.
Yeah, through organizing projects in these places, an exchange takes place, and you know, a sort of synergy happens.
Love that word, synergy.
Absolutely, it's a good one.
Yeah.
And so the spark can jump both ways, but you know, rich and poor, everybody gets to take part and build something new.
Yeah, and it's cross-culture, it can be too. You get a chance to be involved in helping some people, which is good. Your consciousness and your loyalty in a certain sense, or your sense of human involvement, is on the side of the least advantaged in our world. You're not particularly interested in trying to help a big investment banker get extra brass on his yacht.
No, I think the most important thing is supporting something with a good vision.
A good vision.
I mean,
are you concerned with the concept of justice? Or is that something that's important to you? Or?
Justice is certainly important to me.
Yeah.
But that's not
practical.
Yeah,
you want practicality. You want something that can actually work, something you can actually do, rather than just talk about it.
It's more.
I'm trying to get at what motivates you. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand.
And people like you, and maybe some of the youth. That's what I'm trying to get. You know.
I think it's about creating something for the future.
Okay.
Something that people can hope for. Something that, you know, overcomes the tremendous economic and ecological and cultural problems that we face today. It's, you know, you could say a school could do that. It doesn't matter what it is, if it's a school or a, you know,
community center.
Yeah, it could be anything. It's about
water project.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about supporting something that has a vision for
improving
humanity.
the human condition.
Very much so. Yeah.
But focusing on those who have the least opportunity to do that within the way the situation is now.
Yeah. About bringing the advantage and the disadvantage together.
Do you think there's a lot of that sentiment among the people of your age, let's say between 20 and 35 or something like that, that there's a lot of longing for filling that void in terms of the way the world is organized by its so-called leaders now? That's on both sides of the cultural thing, you know, because we're from a country that's very wealthy by and large and so forth. You understand what I'm saying? That part of the world. You think the people looking for that, or do you think young people are mostly just looking out to feather their own nest or build a career or something?
I think there's a smaller window today than there used to be. For example, in the 60s or 70s, when youth would really Yeah, get involved in politics or in any part of society, but in a really, how do you say?
Idealistic, maybe?
Yeah, exactly.
Uh-huh.
Today
Yeah.
there's a much, I think, today there's certainly something moving, and people are interested in changing the world, but I think we get
Discouraged?
assimilated.
Oh, no, assimilated.
You can get very discouraged also, but I think it's easy just to go straight from your ideals and your thoughts just to taking part in what already is there, which is not necessarily wrong, because
Yeah,
I
and it
think,
might be right for some people, but not for others, maybe.
well,
I
I
mean,
think
some people,
it's just important that the spark of idealism goes into
I think
whatever they're doing, and that's part of what this is about, is giving people outlets to
do the right thing.
to put their ideas to work, and to see that there is something that you can hope for and work for, and you can create new forms of community and give people a future.
Well said, young man. I think that's very good. And keep that alive. That's very good. The youth is usually well known for that. It should be there, and that they're doing it, because people tend to say, if you're, let's say, liberal or idealistic when you're young, that's forgivable. But if you are when you're old, you just haven't learned that life is a terrible dog-eat-dog, laissez-faire, climb up the ladder kind of thing that is so much characteristic of the modern society. And there's a lot of unhappiness within the people that are in that context, even though the wealth standards and the measures of wealth, there's a great deal of unhappiness in that, it manifests in those kind of societies. You'd be helping other people in a certain sense with this project, but the person who might be being helped the most of all is you.
Exactly.
You know, that's a real, do you find that to be the case?
Exactly.
Okay, yeah. That's kind of funny, isn't it? You help, by helping others, you help yourself more than you help them, but you are helping them also. And then I wonder if they see the same thing, I wonder, you know. I'm just thinking about the dynamic of that. But it's an important human dynamic of people working together in a cooperative way. It's a state of human consciousness that should be encouraged at all levels of society, don't you think?
It would be good.
Now, you're on your way, as I understand, as part of an IDEM thing, and you're going to go out to the Lakota country, Sitting Bull country.
Exactly.
Out there, I just watched a thing they had another one. I had a lot of friends in the Indian movement, you know, Vernon Bellecourt and Sacagawea and a lot of those people. And the Indian peoples of this country have been so badly treated, it's almost tragic. It seems that way to me, doesn't it, to you, as you read history?
Absolutely.
I don't think we kept one single treaty with those people, and that was a meeting of people that were technologically and in power terms advanced over other peoples, and it seems to me much of the history of the world is the advanced people tend to see themselves as the march of history. Uber-mentioned, you know, they're over-mentioned, they're technologically advanced, and then they begin to think they're socially advanced. The Nazis got to think that they were the Aryan who's a good ruler, that kind of thing. It does, and we did that with the Indian peoples in this North American continent, and there's a lot of answering to take place. And the people, share with us, you're going to be going out to build, if I understand, a house for a teacher.
Yes, exactly.
Share a little bit, because you're leaving within a few days here to go out there and do that.
In a couple of weeks.
What actually will you be
there.
doing? Are you going to get on an airplane? Are you going to drive?
No, we'll be driving out there.
You'll be driving out to Dakota?
Out there.
Yeah, okay.
The project
How many of you are going?
Total of about 15 people will be taking part.
It's got a little bit of the spirit of the old thing, the barn raising. You know, somebody get their barn, and somebody's in the community, and everybody gets together and builds the barn and helps them do that, a little bit of that, right? Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. It's such a beautiful thing that exists and that you're doing that. I think it's really marvelous.
Well,
really
we're trying to make it happen.
Yeah.
We're trying to make it happen.
Okay, tell me what exactly is going to be going on.
Well, they have a school there, and just to go into the history a little bit, schools on Native American reservations used to be something of a, I don't want to say anything wrong, but they they used to take children out of their families
Wow.
and put them in boarding schools, and if they spoke their own language, they would get, you know, beaten.
Yeah, right, right. Oh, yeah,
And,
yeah.
or their mouths washed out with soap.
Yeah, yeah.
They were really basically in prison, you know. And there's a whole generation of Native Americans who went through that.
Yes.
I'm just finding out about all this myself.
Yeah, right.
But,
well, you'll be learning a lot when you go out there, too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing how much you can learn by living.
Certainly.
Yes, go on.
And so this school is it's not a public school. It's not publicly funded.
It's a Waldorf school.
Yes.
Rudolf Steiner.
Also, yeah.
Rudolf Steiner was the number one enemy of Adolf Hitler in Nazi Germany. Great guy. Colors. Yeah, okay, okay, I'm sorry. Anthroposophy?
Yes.
Yeah, are you involved in that?
Yeah.
That's a good thing to be involved in, yeah.
Especially
I'm sorry,
as far as the youth movement.
Pardon?
Especially in the youth movement.
Anthroposophy in the youth movement?
There's a lot of anthroposophical youth involved in conferences and just, you know, discussing ideas
and that's inspired by Rudolf Steiner.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a great person, yeah. I get waylaid because okay.
No?
Okay, so is it anthroposophists? Or people involved in anthroposophy are going to be going to the school to do this, have set up the school out there? Because they had a philosophy of education, a progressive idea of education.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
But the history of this school is that they wanted a school where they could include Lakota culture.
Right, right, absolutely.
The Sioux culture.
Absolutely, yeah.
And they really wanted that to be the founding or the grounding element of the school, that children would learn their own language and
their identity.
Exactly.
Yes.
Incorporate
absolutely.
their own culture into that school, and they looked for different possibilities, or you know, different kinds of schools where that might be possible, and they decided to go with Waldorf.
And these are the people of the community there.
Yeah, these are the natives.
It's still very poor. It's still very poor there.
Well, I mean, the reservations.
The social statistics are terrible.
It's
right.
I mean, you talk of the United States as a wealthy country, but and it is in some ways, but the average income out there on Pine Ridge is $3,000 a year.
Yeah, you can't do very much with that at all.
You can't at all.
Except language, maybe, or too much of that. Yeah. And when they're taking your identity away, if they take your identity away, that's really serious business. If they just take it, they did it with the black people here, with the slaves. How horrible. They take away their history, they take away their name, they take away everything, and then they try to turn them into, well, anyway, you know the story. And it's when you take away somebody's identity, it's a terrible, because the sense of identity is extremely important to human psychology and social organization.
If you don't have an identity, then you don't really have anything.
Well, okay. I want to be a little careful there, because a lot of and the business of the colonizers and the people who have run things and the power structure is to take away that identity, in terms of, like Rome did the same thing to a lot of people they conquered.
Or the Industrial Revolution.
Or the Industrial Revolution. And there's a certain amount of assimilation. Marshall McLuhan said, we live in a global village. You can now go all over the world. You now got the internet. So there's a lot of forces that are assimilating or turning the various cultural traditions into a world culture. But it's got to be guarded in the idea, well, you have to do, you're going to have some sort of way where you can have a celebration of diversity and cultural diversity and the uniqueness of the people, but at the same time, some of the advantages can also be distributed more equitably among everybody. I think something like that's going to have to be
Something has to be organized differently.
Yeah, definitely. I couldn't agree with you more on that. Qualitatively, perhaps, yeah. But anyway, you're going to be there, and there's a teacher, apparently, at the Waldorf School.
Yeah, it's a small school, and one of the things that they need at this school before they, grow into a larger school is a house for the kindergarten teacher to live in. Okay. That way, it ensures that a kindergarten teacher has somewhere to live. And so, in some ways, it seems, you're going out into an Indian reservation where unemployment's over 80%. Yeah. People really don't have anything, and they live, many people in a smaller house oftentimes, and they really everybody needs a house out there, or many people do.
For one thing, it's damn cold.
Yeah, in the winter it's
cold. In the winter time
and
out there,
in the
it's
summer
really cold. It's like, 40 and 50 below zero up in Minnesota.
It gets down to 40 below, definitely.
Yeah.
And so in organizing this project, that's definitely something I've thought about is, you know, we're building one house for a kindergarten teacher.
So you've organized this yourself, sort of, at a core way?
I'm involved in the organization,
okay,
definitely.
Good. Okay,
I've been...
how long have you been working on it?
Since, well, the idea first came up in January.
Okay.
And, yeah, since March I've been slowly getting it together.
And you in touch with other people?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
In touch with the internet and stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, that helps, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, we have a straw bale builder from out there.
Straw what?
Straw bale.
Straw bale, what's that?
Straw bale. It's
a building material?
Ecological building method.
Uh-huh.
You take, like, you know, a straw bale.
Uh-huh, yeah.
And you use it as you might, you know, it's...
An adobe.
Well, you use it like you would use bricks.
Yeah, okay.
You're piling them up.
Yeah.
And you make a wall out of those, and it's great insulation.
Yeah, I bet it would be. I bet it would be. And then do you put mud over it or something, or adobe or something? You do, yeah. Have they been? Yeah, okay.
So it's got the ecological element because it's straw bale. You're not using any, you know, synthetic insulation. It's an environmentally sustainable thing. You're not using, you know, wood that you clear cut in Canada. It's been around for a bit. It's a growing movement.
Oh, really?
Especially out west.
I would have thought. They didn't use, the pioneers didn't use that in the 19th century and so
They didn't have straw bales as such back then.
They didn't have straw?
Well, they used to just stack it or bind it, you know.
Yeah.
The straw bales as we have them now came with tractors, I think.
Okay, yeah, okay. Well, I know that all those plains, you could not use the plains, the grassy plains. You get past the forest in the east, and you get out into the plains. We got the richest soil. I did geography at a doctorate at the university. And the richest soils, we were so blessed, the country of the United States. They've got the richest, these Chernozem and Podzol soils. Exactly. They got these rich soils out there under the grasslands, but they were of no use to us technologically until we had a steel plow. Because the roots were so thick, you could not cut it with anything that we had, just with an iron. You had to have a steel plow to cut it. And then it revealed some of the richest soils in the whole world in those grasslands in the plains. You know, Indiana, Illinois, Iowa, out there, yeah.
And they're all gone now.
Yeah.
I mean, most